Hi there, I'm James McGregor, publisher of the Silicon Valley San Jose Business Journal. On June 8th, the Business Journal, in partnership with Focus Business Bank, hosted our inaugural nonprofit Strategies for Success breakfast. The panel included Emmett Carson, CEO of the Silicon Valley Community Foundation, Angela McConnell, Executive Director of the Montalvo Arts Center, and Tim Zanni, Office Managing Partner for the Silicon Valley office of KPMG. The last several years have been very challenging for area nonprofits. The combination of higher demand and a tougher fundraising environment have made a very difficult job even tougher for area nonprofit executives. Our nonprofit Strategies for Success breakfast brought together a panel of nonprofit and private sector leaders to share best practices on nonprofit fundraising. We hope you enjoy the following video. And remember, the Silicon Valley San Jose Business Journal delivers the very best local business news, whether in print, online, or at our events. I look forward to hearing from you, and you can always contact me at jmcgregor@bizjournals.com. Thanks. Can you give us the high-level overview, as you see it, of the state of nonprofits today?
Oh, well, it is a challenging period, as the people in the audience already know. As you mentioned, government is cutting back. Corporations, particularly those in our valley, are spreading their wealth more broadly, both nationally and around the world. And foundations are probably holding steady. So they're not growing, they're not decreasing, they're becoming more focused. And the opportunity, and we can talk about it later, is around individuals, that some of whom are having wealth events. But it is a tough period of time. It is not likely to get significantly better in the next 12 months in terms of those dynamics. The good news is it is getting better than it was 18 months ago. So if you're still in this room, you're a survivor, right? You're a survivor, and that a lot of people have not survived and are not in this room. So take heart in that you have survived. The worst is over, but we're not out yet.
Great. This next question is to Angela and Emmett, but Angela, I'll start with you. Can you give us an overview of the last 12 months at Montalvo and then what the next 12 months would look like?
Sure. The last 12 months we have been very, very busy preparing to celebrate our important and exciting centennial year. Montalvo was built in 1912, so 2012 we have been hosting an array of very wonderful and diverse programming to bring the community to Montalvo. Everything ranging from this Sunday's Wedding of the Century, where we have 300 people who are going to renew their vows, people who have been married at Montalvo 50 or 60 years ago, and anybody who's never been married at Montalvo who wants the chance to do so. This Sunday, Wedding of the Century. Although my colleagues are looking at me and they're going, no, it's sold out, it's closed, we don't have enough champagne. So we've been planning an array of wonderful programs. We've hosted 50 artists from all over the world. Okay, you're saying where? Maybe from about 15 countries this past year. Writers, poets, musicians, composers, visual artists in our residency program. We completed a major feasibility study to assess the capacity of Montalvo to raise some significant dollars to preserve this asset for the next 100 years. We've completed a major study on our 175 acres, a master garden plan. And we've been hosting children, about 15,000 children, in our arts education programs, and on and on and on and on.
How many of you have been to Montalvo? It's pretty good. That's pretty good. It is a best-kept secret. If you've not spent any time there, it is a best-kept secret. It's fabulous. Emmett.
Well, on three different fronts. On the programmatic front, as many of you know, we got a great victory with the San Jose City Council putting a moratorium on payday lending operations here. We were very active on that. We are asking difficult questions about why San Mateo and Santa Clara County needs to have 54 different school districts with superintendents and school boards. We are working in connecting.
You get any answers on that?
Well, we've just released a report. It's on our website, and I won't go into it now, but the history of how we ended up with that is not the conventional wisdom that people use to explain why we're
Sure.
there. We're doing great work with legal services and connecting them with immigrants who we believe make important contributions to our community. So a lot of great programs, disaster preparedness on the coast side. You know, think about the Japanese tsunami materials are washing up on our shores now. What your images are of what happened to the Japanese coastline can happen to our coastline. We're in earthquake country. That same kind of tsunami can hit us. We're working with residents along the coast around their disaster preparedness, because getting over the hill is not going to be an easy matter if it comes. And what you do is you get out the way when it comes. On the individual donor front, as I mentioned, we're having a wealth event. We're doing two things there. We're trying to capture that wealth for our community, and then we're trying to be gate openers and not door closers in terms of encouraging those people to give here, but also to give, and to try to walk that line of, hey, you can do both and. Philanthropy is a smorgasbord. It's not an either or. You can pick and choose and do as much as you want to your heart's content. And then lastly, we announced, and it's in today's Mercury News, a merger where EF, formerly known as the Entrepreneurs Foundation, will be folding into our business development and brand department, where we will have a soup to nuts offering for corporate clients. And again, that's an opportunity for us to work with those companies around how are they giving to the community, how are they engaging their employees, how are they committed to helping both the local area, but also where they have offices around the world. So it's been an exciting time at the Community Foundation.
Great, Emmett, thank you. So Tim, since becoming the managing partner for the Silicon Valley office of KPMG, can you talk about what strategies you have implemented that has changed how and what KPMG is supporting in the community?
It's a great question. It's one of the first things that I wrestled with when I became managing partner 3 years ago. And just for perspective, KPMG is 144,000 people strong around the globe. We have 750 people here in our office in Santa Clara. Hopefully, when you drive down the 101, you see our building on Great America Parkway. And when I took over, I inherited an incredibly good-hearted organization. Community service is one of our 6 core values at KPMG, and you can probably guess what the other 5 are around what we do as a business. But community values are incredibly important. And so I had an organization that was out in the community every weekend. They were trying to raise money every week. And so what I said to our team was, we need to be more focused, and we need to skinny down those number of organizations that we are doing business with. We need to get a critical mass of our people together so that we not only are supporting the organization, but we're bringing our team together in supporting an organization. And so we've built a program now around 4 or 5 not-for-profit organizations that have executive sponsors. So some of my partners, some of my senior leaders in my office run each one of those organizations' efforts in the community with us. And so very important that we're focused in the community so that we can have the greatest impact with the organizations we choose to work with.
So for private companies, there's a feel-good factor for supporting nonprofits. I'd like you to explain a little bit about, beyond the feel-good factor, what things are you hoping to get out of a nonprofit relationship?
Yeah, this may, I guess I'm the business guy in the room, I'm the customer in the room, so I guess I have the license to say things that might be a little edgy. But usually I say to my people when they come to me with a pitch to support an organization, I usually start with, I don't really care that much about the cause because everybody is doing great things. And all of you here are doing great things. What's important for me beyond the cause is that we can rally a lot of our people together, that we can make a tremendous impact with the greatest number of our people. So it's not just about our wallet, it's about our time. 750 people that are community-minded can make a tremendous impact. So I want to bring as many of them together as I can. And the other thing that I think about is how can it make a business impact? Can I develop a calling card so when people think of KPMG in the community, they think of us doing X or Y? And I suspect that you can't think of that right now because we're still working on that. And we're having a difficult time actually doing that. And so bringing our people together and having a business imperative along with that feel-good factor is incredibly important to us.
Thanks. Angela, I know that you've been a nonprofit executive for several years now. Can you talk about how the job has changed and where you spend most of your time now?
Sure. I think the job has changed over the past 5 to 10 years, especially with regard to the Sarbanes-Oxley accounting requirements. It's a good thing to be transparent and to have real organization there, but it's also real work and real time and real investment to organizations, finance departments, operations folks, and board committees that are already stretched very thin. So it's changed in that way. It's become more complex from years ago. I think it's definitely much more competitive, as Emmett started out by saying. We are all competing for dollars. We're competing for trustees. We're competing for colleagues, for staff, for volunteers. So it's really, really challenging and complex. Where I spend my time is in inspiring, hopefully inspiring, trustees like yourself to do the work of being stewards, being passionate stewards for Montalvo. I have 30 direct reports, and they are my trustees. And at any given day, hour, weekend, evening, and I love you all, I can get a call to have a meeting or a conversation. And I think that you need to be accessible, and you need to be thankful and grateful that you have that kind of passion. So I spend my time hopefully inspiring the trustees to do their work in the community, in promoting Montalvo, and also in certainly fundraising. We're raising about $3.5 million a year in operating and program support. And of course, we've got a campaign coming up. Second part of that question you asked initially was, what's up for the next 12 months? Next 12 months, the next 2 weeks, the next minutes, we're raising the quiet phase of a $50 million campaign. And so it's exciting, it's inspiring, it's daunting, it's exciting, it's inspiring, it's daunting.
Tim, I want to come back to you. I know that KPMG works with many emerging and established companies here in the Valley. I have a two-part question for you. What is their approach to community support, and how has that changed? And then secondly, specific to some of the emerging technology companies, is supporting the community important, and does it matter?
I'll take it in two parts. Established companies, the small population that I personally have seen are working in the same direction that we are at KPMG. They're becoming very focused. They have executive sponsors developing each one of their particular relationships with their not-for-profits. But they continue to want to do good things in the community. It is a very, very important part of any good business decision, is to spend time in the community. So I think established companies are very similar to what we're doing. The entrepreneurs, I would actually broaden it a little bit beyond community service. At KPMG, we would call it corporate responsibility. So I don't necessarily see the entrepreneurial organizations, and we work with hundreds of them in their attempts to become the next Facebook. And corporate responsibility, I would define it as community service, diversity, and living green. And in each of those particular avenues, I think entrepreneurial companies are making business decisions that are good in those three buckets of corporate responsibility. So I don't know that they have a great treasurer or a lot of time. It's usually an organization without a lot of cash, without a lot of people. But they're making decisions that are important in those three buckets: diversity, community service, and living green.
Emmett, a lot of the emerging technology companies have people in leadership positions who are on the bright side of 30 and maybe younger. What have you seen as some of the best practices from nonprofits in trying to engage that group?
So, and it's not different from foundations or government. I think we have to be best in class as a nonprofit. People are looking for best in class organizations. And as you establish yourself as best in class in that network, they pull people in. Let me speak specifically to the demographic you mentioned. Those individuals want as much engagement as they do around writing a check. And our organizations aren't used to that kind of engagement. We want the check and not as much engagement. Right? And the world has changed. And I'm going to take just a minute to explain what I mean. It used to be that you could go to your doctor and they'd write out a prescription and you'd say, "Thank you very much," and you go get it filled and you take it just like they told you. Right? And you hope to get better. Now you go to your little PDA and you Google it and you say, "Boy, there's another one. How come you didn't prescribe this? And this has this kind of side effects and you didn't tell me about this." You don't think you're a doctor, but you think you're a participant in the activity. In every walk of life, classrooms are different now because when you let your students Google and say, "Excuse me, professor, that's not what it says here." Right? It's different. So we have to understand it's not just happening to us as nonprofits. The world has changed in the relationship. So we're no longer the experts alone in the room. People want to participate. The model of they give it and trust you and they go away until the next time you come is over.
So is there an example out there of somebody that's done a great job of that outreach and engagement?
I think we're all struggling with how to do it because we're so trapped in models that don't allow for the kind of 24/7 engagement. We sort of get the email, we get the questions, we go, "Again? Really? What, why did," right? I mean, be honest, right? And so we've got to change our mind. I don't think there's a best-in-class model because it's all new. Right? I haven't seen it. We're struggling with how to do it best in class. But that's the new model. And so if your mindset is they write the operating check and they go away, no, they want to write the specific check to the thing that they care about, that they've helped shape, that they know about, that they've asked a lot of questions about. And you're saying, if I've got to do that with everyone, I don't have the time. But that's the expectation of everyone. Just like when you go, that doctor is saying, if every patient now is going to ask me questions about why I prescribed that medication, how do I find the time? Right, Chris? I mean, and you got to figure it out. But if you think it's going to go back to the way it used to be, society has changed. Right? And so, Tim thought he was going to be the provocative one. I usually own that title.
Angela, as someone who is on the Montalvo board, I know that you are relentless about getting the board to participate and support and connect Montalvo with other supporters. Many of the people that sit on nonprofit boards are sitting on several nonprofit boards, and they're being asked by their executive director to do the same thing. How do nonprofits get around donor fatigue and broaden the base of supporters?
Right, and I like the word relentless, right? It's a good word. Angela's
and
relentless.
Accurate.
And accurate. Well, I think that's just exactly what Emmett was just describing. I think you have to figure out what the genius is of each trustee, what's What's the thing that motivates them? You know, there are lots of people here in Silicon Valley and lots of people who might be able to serve on your board, but if they don't have passion for some component of your program, they shouldn't be on that board. I think that's the nugget. Here's the nugget. Write it down. Person who took the train. You've got to make sure they are completely passionate about what your mission is. They are in alignment with your vision, because if they're not, donor fatigue is going to happen like right at the get-go. And you have to focus them. I mean, we have trustees who are just there because they want to see that arboretum thrive. And talk to them about an artist from, you know, Mexico, or talk to them about the children's programs. That's nice, but did you see that tree? Yeah. And then focus that on what they love. And there are some trustees who are just completely passionate about the education programs. Make sure they're on the education committee. You give them updates about school contracts. Feed their passion. Figure out what their passion is. And their passion is their genius often. It's what they do. It's what they know. It's what they want to be a part of. Donor fatigue is real. You have to be balanced. You have to keep it fresh. You have to make it fun. We have ABBA awards at every trustee meeting. Here's another nugget. And it's this long, big pencil, and they're different colors, about this big, and it's sharp. It's kind of like you're sharp, and you're getting to the point. And Angela walks around the trustee table and stands behind somebody, and then talks about this person and why they're getting the ABBA award, Angela's Above and Beyond award. Mr. Greger got one. And it just keeps it fresh. It makes them understand that it's not just about the check, because everybody in the room writes checks. It's about going out of their way, keeping Montalvo in their mind, bringing people to the organization. That's what you want.
So many nonprofits have boards that are fundraising boards. Would you suggest that a nonprofit shrink the size of its board and have a board that's a lot more passionate, or broaden the board so you've just got a lot more bodies there who can raise a lot more money?
You know, the question is an interesting one. I think you need diversity on your board. I think I would go for a large board, just because I feel like you need to reflect your community. But everybody on that board should understand that they are stewards. And to me, stewardship is about bringing people to the organization. It's not necessarily saying, you got to bring in $1 million next week. That'd be really nice, and we can talk about that. But you got to bring in $1 million next week. Some people are going to say, great, that's all I can do for you, Angela. And I'll say, okay. But others are going to say, are you crazy? I can't get you $1 million. So you've got to give them opportunities
Sure.
to be a part of it.
So Tim, I know you spent a lot of years in New York. How is support for nonprofits there unique or different than it is here in Silicon Valley?
Geez, now that I've been introduced as a New Yorker, I can really be provocative. And by the way, I do underspend my budget every year, so you know I do have some cash, but it's not about that, as you mentioned.
Take note, Montalvo table.
I think there was a nugget there.
That's right.
I was.
That's right.
I was. You know, it's interesting. You know, that was one of the questions that you gave me ahead of time, and I've been really wrestling with that. And if I think back upon my time, and I'm talking about New York, I'm talking about New York City, Manhattan, and I was there for 13 years, from 1996 to 2009. And what I found about that community, probably not described as a community too often, is it's really focused. And they get behind a few organizations, whether it be Lincoln Center, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, or the Food Bank, or the Boys and Girls Club of Harlem. And they're recognized, and most businesses get behind them. Here, I've been struck by not only the entrepreneurial spirit of the business world, but the entrepreneurial spirit of not-for-profits here. And I'm not sure that that's a great thing. I looked at the attendee list. There were 58 organizations attending this session today. 58 organizations. Now, Emmett was talking about a merger today and bringing organizations together so that together they can have a calling card and together they can make a more powerful impact in the community. But I'm confused a little bit by by the causes. I'm confused a little bit by the number of organizations. And I think I would challenge organizations to look at some common causes, how they can do things together, how they can brand themselves collectively. Because I don't think 58 organizations who are here, plus probably hundreds of others that are in the community here, can really make that great an impact when it's so it's really so disaggregated.
Well, let me turn to Emmett then, because the Silicon Valley Community Foundation is the result of a merger, and you've just gone through another merger. How was that merger a couple of years ago important to the ongoing success of your organization?
Well, we're mixing a lot of things here. So certainly our merger resulted, I think, in 2 + 2 = 5. We were direct competitors in a place that is increasingly seeing itself as a region. And there are a number of issues that cross the county line that we now are able to talk about. There were donors who were saying, I didn't want to be trapped between choosing between two, so they made a third alternative to go someplace else. The proof that the merger worked is that in 5 years, we've raised over $1 billion, spent over $1 billion in grants, and increased our corpus by $500 million. Compared to our 2 parent organizations that existed for 91 years, that was the collective donations that they received were $1 billion. So we did in 5 years what collectively over 91 years they did. I do want to come back to this notion of coming together. I think you need to come together where there are real common purposes to make it happen. I was a grant maker for many years at the Ford Foundation in New York, and I would describe that environment very different than Tim described it as a grant maker. There are a lot of nonprofits in New York, right? And I think every nonprofit, like every small accounting firm, has a right to exist if you get donors. You have earned your right to exist. If you can't earn donors, if you can't get corporate support, if you can't get the revenue, then you haven't earned your right to exist and you should go away. If you can merge or partner with somebody to make the work better, you ought to do that. But I have been with communities of color and they say the XYZ after-school youth program doesn't serve my kid because they don't have anyone who speaks my language. I've spoken to a black mom raising a single kid and said, I want an African-American male mentor in my son's life. And that's why we created this other organization. She has a right to say that and want that. She also then takes on the responsibility to have to raise the money and convince people to support it. So I start out by saying each of you have a right to exist. You have to prove your right to exist, just like every entrepreneur who starts out with a business has to convince somebody to invest. And many of them don't work. Sure. Many nonprofits go under, but that's how markets work. So, yes, if you can find alignment, but mergers are tough, they're expensive, they're hard, and 2 weeks don't make a strong. Okay? 2 weak institutions struggling will not result in a strong one. It results in a bigger, weaker one. So you understand, it's not easy to do, and it takes money to come together. It's not free. Integration is expensive.
Sure. Angela, arts organizations in the Valley, unlike, say, in New York, are often near or at the bottom of the food chain of corporate support. How do you make funding arts organizations relevant for corporate donors when other priorities like education and healthcare are higher up the food chain?
I think that's our biggest challenge. How many of you are from arts organizations in the room? Yeah, see, so we can't even afford to be here today. That's how challenging it is. I mean, really, and we should all be very, very upset about this. I mean, certainly all three of us spent quite a bit of time in New York. And in New York, that is not the case. And in San Francisco, that is not the case. And yet we're in Silicon Valley, and let us not forget that innovation and creativity are what we export to the world, period. And yet, we have had generations now of children graduating from high school without having mandatory visual arts and music in their classrooms, and we should say that is outrageous. And so we are trying day after day after day to make the argument that the arts matter. And they do matter. It's not superfluous. I mean, we can sit here for hours talking about studies that Stanford did and that Carnegie did, and yet it becomes not even at the lower, but at the bottom of the food chain. And almost every 6 months, somebody will come down the hall and say, guess what? They're not funding the arts anymore. Guess what? They've shifted their priorities away from the arts. So what to do? Of a $3.5 million operating fundraising goal, I think we get probably 5 or 7% from corporations. And I'm not speaking about Focus Bank, and I'm not speaking about Applied Materials, or the Business Journal, or Sandisk. I might be speaking with all due respect to Emmett, because Community Foundation shifted away from the arts. But I mean, those are decisions, and those are decisions that have to be faced because there are needs. Food and
There's
clothing
nothing like
and shelter.
making the ask in front of 150 people, Angela. Congratulations. A strategy for is.
I'd love to talk about it
Okay.
in a minute.
But my point is this: we have to be very organized, and we have to stand our ground, and we have to make the connection between art and science, and art and technology, and art, and I mean, it matters to how children get along in the world. It's about educating the whole child. It's about giving people confidence and how to work together, solve problems creatively. It's what makes us human. So if we are in Silicon Valley and we're saying this is not a priority, I feel like we better get our acts together and we better fix this so that the companies that do support the arts and arts education should be applauded. And we need those trustees to come on board and help us. So we brought Applied Materials on, we brought Cisco on, we brought Intel.
Emmett, I know you want to comment there.
Yeah, no, it's with all due respect. You know, I love the arts. I raised the artist. My daughter's an artist. I get it. Groups, individuals make choices. Disabilities are important. We don't have a grant-making program for disabilities. We don't have a grant-making program for autism. So when people say, boy, this is important, I get the passion. But I ran the Community Foundation in Minneapolis. I was at Ford in New York. You have to ask the question, why hasn't that field matured here? And I don't think it's because people just don't get arts. I think that's an easy answer, right? The more difficult answer is to say, why and how come? And we're not comfortable in asking those questions about a number of different areas. And so I go back to saying, when you can show that you are best in class, you attract resources. That's in every field. I have donors who give to arts organizations all around the world, and we encourage that. You should talk to them about what is it about our community that they say, you know, I don't think I see the same level of best in class. And so, again, we continue to say, boy, we want it, and every different passion is in this room. That's what the sector is about. But the people who are making the funding choices are asking, what is your impact? How are you best in class? And it's not enough to say, we ought to get it because. We ought to get it because we care. You will get it because you're best in class, you're showing impact, you're being effective. That's how you get it. And if you're not getting it, the problem isn't with them. I see it in every area. I'm not picking on the arts here. I want to be very specific. I see it all the time when somebody says, boy, we really care about the thing we care about and people ought to get it. The problem isn't with them. The problem is how are you framing to get the support? Because people are giving. They're just not giving to you. And so the question is why? And those are tough, hard, challenging questions. But every organization that says we want more has to say, why are they giving over there and over there and over there, and we're coming up short?
Right.
Hard questions, but you got to ask them.
Tim, this next question is for you. I know that several of your partners sit on the boards of area nonprofits. How do they ensure that they balance the risk of the liability that comes with being on a board with their desire to really do what's best for the organization?
And you're right, James. We do have a number of our partners that sit on boards of not-for-profits here in the Valley, and it's a very important function for our partners to not only give back their personal time and treasure to organizations, but to also connect with business leaders that sit on those boards. You know, it really is a core competency of KPMG to decide who to enter into business with. If you think about what we do, like many of you know that we sign the financial statements for some of the largest companies around the world, and it's very important for us to have a very sterling reputation in what we do. We're essentially the referee in the financial world. And so making sure that we make the proper decisions about who we associate with is very important to us. And we go through a diligence process internally, right. Not only with each of the board members, but with the executives that are on those not-for-profit organizations to make sure that we want to be associated with them. What's as important for us, however, and what gets a little tricky for us, is staying independent. We can't make any decisions when we're on a not-for-profit board that involve our clients, for example. We don't want to get on one side or another of a debate involving our clients because we have to stay independent. We need to make sure that we're the stewards in the financial world. So that's probably as important to us as any risk related to a not-for-profit.
Emmett, so many nonprofits drive the majority of their funding from the public sector. With all levels of government under financial strain, is there a time in the not-too-distant future where you think nonprofits will just opt out of trying to get government funding because it's just too hard to get and there are so many demands on that?
I don't think nonprofits will ever stop.
I'm not saying if the phone rings and someone says, I've got $1 million, I want to give it to you. But in terms of the time and energy that have to go in now to get that money from whether it's state or local or federal.
Yeah, so let's get the history right. It used to be government paid for and provided the service and the facilities. And then around the 70s, government said, we're going to be efficient. So we're going to get out of the facilities and running the business. We're going to outsource the nonprofits. It wasn't nonprofits. It said we're going to go to the nonprofit providers and help expand their capacity and get out of the business of running these things because we're not very good at it. And then having done that now, because of the shrinkage, they're now pulling out and saying, well, government won't provide it at all. And so nonprofits that relied on about a third of their budget, right, coming from government are saying we can't continue to provide and operate when a third goes away. And so I don't think they'll get out of the business. I think they will shrink. Let's say one other thing. There's a debate going on in Santa Clara County about contracting and rebidding. We ought to be in the business of supporting rebidding. You can't have contracts that stay in place for 10 and 15 years and never come up. You can't be best in class and say, I get it forever. And I know that's challenging for the people that have had it, but as a sector, we need to say that helps us ensure that the best operators, now there are obligations on county to do it right, to have good evaluation processes and procedures, all that's true. But we also need to say that this is in our community's best interest that these things come up for bid. They come up for bid on a regular, predictable basis, and people don't get a lock just because they got it first. Can't work, and we have to be the ones to say that. So, I know that's uncomfortable, but that's part of the new world of accountability. And if we're saying we don't want accountability, then that hurts us all in significant ways.
Angela, the success
you
of...
can clap, right? No, nobody wants to be on film now, right? Because you all know what I'm saying. See, there's a little argument going on, and people are going, I don't want to be on film clapping for that. But we have to speak up because this is key to our credibility as a sector. And if we're saying we're against open bidding processes, they need to be
open
done
bidding for
well
nonprofit funding
by the county. If we don't say that that's a good standard for us to live by, that people get it and keep it the way it is, that undermines our entire credibility for accountability. And we've got to own that, right? And I know it's uncomfortable, but we've got to own it. And you all know what I'm saying, right? Those who aren't in our sector don't know. You all know what I'm saying.
Angela, I want to talk about talent for a minute. The success of any organization, for-profit, nonprofit, public sector, long-term is really determined by how good the staff is. How do you recruit, and how do you keep the talent that you have at a nonprofit?
That's a #1 priority and a big challenge and opportunity. I had a mentor who was a VP of HR at a high-tech company on the board, and he said to me once that great talent is cheap, Angela, but poor talent is really expensive. So you better make darn sure that you spend the time in the recruitment process. And again, it gets back to me for passion. Because if you're bringing somebody on board, whatever organization you're in, and they're going to do finance, or they're going to do marketing, or they're going to do development, and they could be doing those functions in any other organization and be happy, that's a red flag. Passion, 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 passion has to be at the top of the list when you're recruiting folks. And so if you do your job at recruiting, then hopefully you're going to respect that employee, give them opportunities to show their genius, right? And then help them to delegate everything but that genius. And then reward them and acknowledge them. And we have ABBAs for staff too. And I think the table back there, you all have your ABBAs, pretty much. So it's important to do that. Also, it has to be fun. And we have mandatory fun days. And if you don't attend, Angela gets really cranky. You missed the fun day. What happened? You gotta do it. You really do, because this is relentless, rigorous work. It's 24/7, and when we say, "Oh, we work at Montalvo," "Oh, that must be so fun." That's fun. That's nice. No, it's not all the time fun. It's hard work. We get said no several times. We have failures, but you know what? We're doing what we love, and we're making a difference, and we're impacting children and adults and seniors, and making the community a vibrant place where people want to come and live and work and be a part of Silicon Valley.
Emmett, I want to come back to you because so many nonprofits suffer from mission creep. Somebody says, "I'll fund this for X amount of money," and the nonprofit says, "Well, that's not a core competency, but sure, that would be great," and then all of a sudden they own it. How can nonprofits avoid making this mistake?
So I want to reframe it and say you need to be intentional and understand when it's mission creep and when it's not. So I understand that there are smaller nonprofits, and you're always trying to cobble together how to keep it going. And so sometimes you intentionally understand, I've got to take this on. It's not where I'd like to go, but if I don't take it on, I don't get the operating support, and we're not here. What you need to be able to do is say, my North Star is over here, and as soon as I can, I'm going to get back to North Star, not allow that, what started off as a temporary solution, to then build on it and take you further and further away. And so you have to be smart managers about understanding how you're using that. If you're in a strong position, then it's easier to say no. But where most people get there is because they're not in the strongest position. They say, boy, we can take this on for a while. It'll help keep us afloat.
Sure.
And then they forget that they took it on to keep them afloat. And then they're not ready to jettison it when they get strong in the core.
Angela, I see you nodding your head. Do you have
I'm nodding my head because when I got to Montalvo, lots of things were happening. And I think the first thing we did is we said, what are we supposed to be doing? What do we want to do? And what should we just not do anymore? So it's all about having a plan, having a strategic plan, and then having the discipline to stick to that plan so that you're in a meeting and somebody says, isn't this a great idea? And oh, somebody wants to fund it. That is a great idea, but not in this year, not with the goals we have to accomplish. I think I've seen it over and over again. And I think we're all trained now. We bring up the word, isn't this mission creep? We even say it like it's a vocabulary word we love to say. That's mission creep. Get it the heck out of here.
No event in Silicon Valley would be complete without a question around innovation. And Tim, I'm going to start with you. Is there an innovative fundraising strategy that you have seen a nonprofit use? Doesn't matter if it's here, doesn't matter if it's in New York, that you think could be replicated by some of the nonprofits that are here today?
I'm going to actually just pile on this question.
Okay.
The first, and then I'm going to come back to that because mission creep is important to what I said at the beginning from my perspective. That we were good-hearted, if you recall, but we were doing a ton of things. And we had to rein that in.
So there's mission creep for for-profits and nonprofits.
Absolutely. And we had to be in the community and be focused on what we do and be able to have a lot of folks that are doing very impactful things in the community. So it's important from our perspective, too. Innovative fundraising techniques. I'm actually going to tell a story. Because as I looked at our community giving campaign when I first got here, as I mentioned, lots of great things were going on. But I wanted to do something where we brought a lot of our people together. And the letters and the phone calls that I get all that, and I've got the standard response and so forth and so on. My recommendation, or at least what works with our organization, is to make it personal. I sat down at dinner one night with a very unlikely partner, the president of the San Jose Giants. And I sat down with him and I said, we're really struggling with how we can put 750 people to work in the community doing something good. How do we do that? And he said, we've just formed a foundation for the Giants, and we'd like to do something with that foundation, do something good in the community. It's typically what a franchise will do in the organization. So after a couple of years of what I call research and development, last summer, we had a 3-week baseball camp on Martin Luther King Field in East Palo Alto with kids from the YMCA and the Boys and Girls Club and talent from the San Jose Giants and 125 volunteers from KPMG over a 3-week period, with upwards of 100 kids coming together from 9 o'clock in the morning to 3 o'clock in the afternoon learning baseball, which is a very underutilized skill in the inner city and in underdeveloped communities. And so we developed a reading program along with First Book to bring reading to the kids. And we are making a real impact as a result of that program. And it really got down to making it personal to us and having those conversations with me and my team about how we can make an impact. Because remember, as I said, I want a lot of people from my organization participating. That's the challenge that I would have to this group.
Angela.
Yeah, I don't think there's any magic bullet. I think Emmett started by saying it's really individuals, and we're all talking about individuals. It's really about relationships. I think knowing your donors, knowing your trustees, and once they leave your board, if there are the limits on the term, don't just say, bye-bye, thanks a bunch. Stay in touch with them. we created a new category called Lifetime Trustee. Sounds like a sentence, but it's not. It's really great. And it's such an honor for trustees, and you have criteria around it. You know, people who've had, you know, decade-long support, real passion for the organization, that is an honor. They are going to be forever associated with your organization. So that's one suggestion. Another is around challenge grants. We've all done challenge grants, right? They're fun, they're exciting. But I really like the urgent challenge grant. I've had challenge grants that were hours long. I've had challenge grants that were 30 days or 14 days, and you take that to another person and you say, this is really important. It's so important that we went out and we've got this opportunity, but that opportunity is going to go away unless we get this support. And that, to me, works well.
Emmett.
It was the arts group, the Walker Arts Center in Minneapolis, which had a very highbrow, if you will, demographic, and they wanted to diversify that. They really wanted to get out into the community, but the Walker had such a brand reputation that they didn't know how to sort of break down that, hey, we're really a place for everybody, for different ethnic groups, etc. They had a fair for kids outside, and with clowns and face painters and the community came out, and it softened the image for them to then get people inside where they expanded their membership because people saw them as being a different institution. The point of that is I think you have to say, what demographic am I trying to go at? What problem am I trying to solve, or who am I trying to engage? And not simply say, you know, we want to go raise money from any place, anybody. Who are we trying to get and structure a plan that gets at them, not directly, but from the side? And so they went after people's kids to get them. No, but you know, they said, you know, moms and dads are going to look for an experience for their kids. And so it was a great way to come at people in a way where they could sort of be pulled in, and not, you know, a frontal assault.
We go after people's kids all the time.
Hey.
So the last question, but you have to answer it in 10 words or less, and we're going to give you a minute to think about it. The last question, 10 words or less. If there was one piece of advice or one action item that you would recommend to nonprofits this morning, what would it be? Before we hear those 10-word or less answers, we're going to make the drawing for the SPA certificate. All right. Dick, I want you to reach in there. I want you to pull out a name. And the winner is Carol Beatty, Director of Development, College of Science, San Jose State University. Congratulations,
Never
Carol.
win anything.
We're guaranteed to leave with one happy customer this morning.
Yay, Carol! Woo, woo!
Okay, the 10-word or less answer. Angela, we start with you. If there was one piece of advice or one action item that you would recommend to nonprofits, what would it be?
I think you need to think big. I think your grasp should exceed your reach.
Emmett.
Make a specific ask to each one of your trustees for something you'd like them to do for you in the next 30 days.
Tim.
I would say learn our organization and make your pitch personal.
Let's give a round of applause to our panel this morning. I want to thank Focus Business Bank, and I want to thank all of you for coming this morning. Have a great weekend, and thanks again.